We did this story about a famous Civil War story about a soldier who gets shot by a lead mini ball through his testicle, and the mini ball then continues 50 feet further and embeds itself in the womb of a young woman and supposedly impregnates her.
Hello, guys. How are you? Thank you. Hi, Calgary. I am having the best time up here. Thank you so much for giving me a functioning democracy to visit.
That won't be used again?
Stuff is weird. Can I say how amazingly polite you all are? Yesterday, I'm in this parade. I have never ridden a parade to a con before, so thank you for that experience. And also, thank you for the best weather the parade has ever had. It's so gorgeous. You guys are telling me like, oh, it could be like, 40 below on this normal day. And then I'm throwing out stickers. I had about 1,000 of them. And as I was throwing them out, in my personal experience as a semi-famous person, when I have been in places where I am throwing stickers, people lose their minds. They lose their minds a little bit. They swarm the car. Everyone wants a sticker. But here, I'm throwing them out, and you guys are like, oh, no, I think that one's yours. It's so polite. I was blown away. I was like, those are for the kids. And they're like, oh, and they gave them to the kids. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And so I'd love to spend this hour with you answering questions. As you've heard, we've got a couple of microphones set up. I think we already have some folks at them. So let's start right there.
Hi, Adam. It's Sean. As creative people, we often get inspired by an idea or something that we want to build or make. But for whatever reason, either maybe our skills aren't there yet, or we're just too busy, there's other things going on, and they have to go on hold. I find those ideas, those thoughts are like demons. If you don't do something with them, they'll possess you. I found ways of like even just doing a quick sketch, writing about it, just something to deal with it, to get it out of the mind and let you be a good person again. Do you have any advice on situations like that?
Well, yes, I do. First up, I'm going to start by talking about this wonderful book that is out there. Steve Martin, the actor, when I was a child, he was the biggest stand-up comedian on the planet. And he's the first stand-up comedian to sell out arenas. And then he made a movie called The Jerk and stopped doing stand-up entirely. And so then he became a movie star for like 40 years. And he wrote this biography called Born Standing Up. And he talks about the trajectory of his career, starting out as a young magician, then a young comedian, and then starting to get into acting, and then his comedy blew up. And someone says to him at the early part of his career, you will find you will eventually use everything you've ever learned. And I have found that to be true about my career. In every execution I have made a living, everything I have ever experienced has come into play at some point. And so when there are ideas that you can't stop thinking about, I like to memorialize them. I like to put a page in my sketchbook. And those pages are often pages I don't go back to, not for any specific reason, but that there's this wonderful phrase someone once said, I'm not writing it down to remember it later, I'm writing it down to remember it now. And there is a way in which writing stuff down in my sketchbook is a sort of a practice of putting it in my body. So yeah, I appreciate the question, because in your question, I think you're having respect for the fact that your brain goes on tangents you might not be aware of, or you might not know what to do with. And I think that's the beautiful part about being a person, is that you don't always even know what your own point of view is on stuff. You got to make something. I personally have to make stuff, and then after I make it, I'm like, oh, that's why I like that.
So okay.
Hello.
Hi, my name is John. Thanks for being here. I had a former engineering career of 20 years, total dream job, super technical, super creative, and my tools were math and science and all that, right? So cool. Now my job is as a photographer. So again, trying to be creative, different tools, right?
Yep.
And I spent a solid couple of years trying to just reconcile how to kind of meld the best of all the things, you know, and really go from one really different life to another really different life and way of thinking, interacting with people. Everything's different, right? But it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
It took a long time to figure that out. I'm just curious, like, I see a lot of that in what you do. Mm-hmm. Like, what are your thoughts on marrying those things and getting the best thing out of each thing and just making everything better than it was, you know?
I love this. Okay, So first, I'm going to start with a really weird reference. I'm going to quote a Dilbert comic. There's this ancient Dilbert comic that says, rule number 105 is that the best solution to any problem turns out to be the only one you know. And there's a conference table, and one guy's like, we need to use the Dewey Decimal System. And the second person is like, I think we should do it alphabetically. And the third person is actually a porcupine. And the porcupine says, listen to me, people. We must shoot them with quills. It's the only way. So having executed on a bunch of different aesthetic levels, I've done writing, I've done performance, I've done building and prop making. To me, it is what you're saying. It is all the same process projected onto different surfaces. And so I don't think that there's any true thing to be creative at. I don't think that there's one art form that's higher than any other. And I don't even sequester my art forms into aesthetics. Try not to even use the word creativity anymore because I feel like it's almost useless. I think of it as a point of view. That anything that I see that really inspires me, it came from a singular point of view, came from somebody's really true soul. And that when they reveal that, it's always going to be interesting. And now I'll quote one of my favorite writers on this subject, Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his essay Self-Reliance says, to know that what is true in your secret heart is true for all. That is genius. Thank you for that great question. Hello.
Hello, Adam. Thank you for coming up here in the middle of our election. So my question is, on MythBusters, was there anything that the build team of Cary, Grant, and Tori did that you wish that you had done instead?
So many. It's the worst part about being a producer is the stuff you gotta take away from yourself. Because you gotta, it's the common good. We gotta produce this show together. I'm so jealous they got to break out of prison by making rope out of toilet paper. I know I could make rope out of toilet paper, but I wanted to do that episode. They broke out of a jail in Oakland, California. It was great. Like I said, I definitely have some feelings about not having gotten to do those stories. And I'm also like, it's also a great thing to be able to take something that you really want to do and give it to someone else. That show, the ethos of MythBusters really worked like that. And when any one of us was super into a story, that's the story we got to do. I think that also they did one of the best tests that ever happened in the course of the show, which was the airplane toilet pee meteor that built on the outside of the plane in this like freezing wind tunnel. And Grant and Tori going, as it works is still one of my favorite moments in the show. Thank you. Hello.
Hi. But first of all, thank you so much for all the joy and glee that you show us in all of your videos. My favorite episode of MythBusters, weirdly enough, is Down and Dirty with the hand dryers and all of that stuff. Did that episode change how you view the world?
Wait, so Down and Dirty?
Yeah, the one where you tested the hand dryers versus paper towels and all of that?
So that episode fundamentally changed my life. Fundamentally. I'd get into the first bathroom stall. And again, I don't know what kind of stalls you have here, but in America, there's like an inch gap where children can just watch you poop. The paper towels versus the air dryers. I'm still mad about the air dryers. They are spreading a bacterial flume to the edges of every restroom you're in. And when I'm in the airport and I can hear like dudes just using the air dryers, I like hold my breath the whole time I'm in there and peeing, and then rushing out, washing my hands, all holding my breath. For those of you who haven't seen the flu episode, I wore a pair of glasses that gave me a post-nasal drip, but the drip was a liquid that fluoresced under blacklight. And then we had a dinner party with me, Jamie, Tori, Cary, and Grant. And at the end of the dinner party, we turned on the blacklight and the entire table fluoresced. Every piece of silverware, every glass. And I was the only one who had it, except for Cary Byron. Cary Byron, the germaphobe of germaphobes,
The one who removes the blanket off her hotel bed and sets it on fire everywhere she goes. I don't think she's touched a hotel remote in 20 years. She had not a mark on her, and I love that. There's another thing that happened during that story. We were doing the which restroom's cleaner, and we were shooting in this college. And of course, we're shooting in the men's room because the shoot was full of dudes. But I said to my producer, Alice, can I go in? I'm going to go in the ladies' room. And she's like, absolutely. We'll send a camera after you. So I walk into the ladies' room, and there's like a frigging couch in there. There's like a magazine rack and like cucumber water. What the hell? This is why you're always going to the bathroom together. Because there's stuff to do there. The men's room is like, there's a pole that's like, break up your poop with this. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to ask you, first of all, I'm a really big fan of seeing your career from ILM to MythBusters and now Untested. If you were 20 years younger now and you had to take a step in the right direction for your career that you have, what would you be doing?
Well, wow, that's a really lovely question. 20 years, let's see. What was funny about MythBusters showing up on the scene to me professionally was that it was the furthest thing from my mind that something like this could work. I'm very aware that, we all have I said earlier that it's all about a point of view. I really believe that we all have a point of view. And when we execute it and we're honest about it, it's going to be compelling. I really believe that in my soul. I also know that sometimes your point of view intersects with your culture in a way that's important, and sometimes it intersects with your culture in a way that it might not be. It just might not resonate with the culture. But sorry, you asked about the career trajectory. I think it definitely would have been being effects directing. And also, actually, at that time at Lucasfilm, I did reach out to their PR department and I said, I think I'm pretty good at public speaking. And they sent me to Breckenridge, Colorado to give a talk about Industrial Light and Magic special effects at the Breckenridge Film Festival. And it was one of the first times I had stood in front of an audience without a prepared talk, but with total knowledge of the subject. And we had the most fun 90 minutes because Lucasfilm had given me these effects reels where I was able to show how you take this model and you put it over here, and you take this lighting, and you take it over here, and you do this bit of modification. And then they had built this wonderful sequence where the audience got to figure out how an effects shot coalesces. And there's this moment when the crowd went, oh. And I want to tell you, from a performing perspective, that's the best sound in the whole universe. It is a sound, you can totally bribe an audience into a standing ovation. That is a doable thing. I'm sorry, it's really possible. It's music, it's the way you walk, it's how you wave. Literally, there's like a way to do it. You cannot force a gasp out of your audience. That is only earned. Thank you. Hello.
Hello. I'm re-watching MythBusters, and the last episode I watched was the revisit of the arrow splitting and the Confederate rocket. Were there any myths that you guys were wanting to revisit that you guys just never had the opportunity to revisit?
No, for the most part, if we really wanted to do it and we saw a path to doing it, we were always able to get Discovery to agree and often to pony up tens of thousands of dollars. I think they spent over $200,000 on Rocket Car across 3 episodes. Extra than they normally plan to spend. And they were great partners about that. We had so much latitude with Discovery because we did things that no one had ever done before. We did this story about a famous Civil War story about a soldier who gets shot by a lead mini ball through his testicle, and the mini ball then continues 50 feet further and embeds itself in the womb of a young woman and supposedly impregnates her. As Tom Waits said, this is not a birth method for everyone. It's for those who like action. The episode was called Son of a Gun. And we shot this episode in a way that was family friendly. We said genetic legacy. We elided some of the questions a normal person might have.
And we did this episode, and after that, the head of Discovery was like, "That's amazing that you were able to do that. Really, really top-notch, family-oriented programming. Is there any other difficult subject matter you guys are interested in?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to do a whole episode about farts, please." And they were like, "Okay, but you can't say fart."
Gladys!
They wouldn't even let me say my second favorite, which is Chanel number 2. Yes, young person over there, you should ask the last question.
What was the weirdest thing you ever did on MythBusters?
Shoving my body into an Olympic onesie swimsuit. I know I'm beautiful, but Jamie and I both looked like sausages, improperly made. And then swimming in troughs of goo. Thank you so much for that beautiful question. Thank you guys so much. I love you, Canada. I love you, Calgary. I'll see the rest of you at my table over this weekend.